A seat, please, because we are doing very well for time, and we should continue to be on our best behavior so that we have a full session, second part of the session. We're going to continue with this, talking about availability in veterinary antimicrobials, and we're going to invite Maria Jaureguizar, who is the director, manager of the Vet Plus I Foundation, and she's also a vet, and she's worked in pharmacovigilance in animal health and managed reports of adverse effects of veterinary drugs and medicines. So I'll pass the floor to her. Thank you very much. Thank you to the experts from the PRIN and this committee for inviting us to be here. And I want to say good day to you all. I see a lot of familiar faces, friends, people from the foundation or associated with the foundation and the council, the committee, and say hello to those of you online and those of you in France and Portugal. And I'm going to tell you what Vet Plus I is and the tools that we have for research, development and innovation in animal health. We are the forum in Spain that gathers all relevant stakeholders: academia, research, industry, Ministry for Agriculture, researchers, scientists, veterinarians, farmers. I know that a lot of the sectors and industries are present here, and all together, as you can see on the picture, from the eye of, or the art of research to the eye of innovation, work together to try to advance, since 2008, the launching of new products on the market, not just antibiotics and antimicrobials, but tools to improve the health of our animals. This is our structure, which I am going to very briefly go through, and it's important for our daily work because we are vets, but we're not experts on everything, and we need the Vet Plus I family. More than 830 members, more than 450 organizations. We are the Vet Plus I family with all the private and public parts that are in our organization. We are a not-for-profit foundation. We need patrons, and the Veterinary Industria is our main patron, the Spanish Association of Animal Nutrition and Health Industry, and then we have companies that help us to do everything that I'm going to tell you about now. And we also have partner organizations, in this case the General Council of Veterinary Surgeons and doctors in Spain, and also the Council for Foundations for Science and the One Health platform, which you're all familiar with. Our board guides all our activities and approves all the meetings, documents and what have you. And as you can see, it's represented all this value chain. The ministry, we've got the Ministry for Agriculture, the Agency for Drugs, the CSIC, Veterinary Industria, farmers' organizations represented by ASOPROVAC, veterinarians, etc. And the working groups are the ones who do the work, as their name says. And the first working group is for prioritisation of animal diseases and gap analysis to see what the industry needs, coordinated by the Ministry for Agriculture, Luis Romero. And working group 2, research. Working group 3, technological transfer. And number 4, regulatory issues. Vet Plus I emerged to develop and take to market tools for needs and not just drugs and medicines. Now, what activities do we promote? The first one was the strategic agenda for research into animal health, to tell all experts under the Ministry for Agriculture to debate what animals needed and need in terms of disease, type of product, or other kinds of tools. Like, for instance, a disease might not need a vaccine, but it might need an epidemiological roadmap or something like that. And this agenda has been updated recently. And then we are also interlocutors for the national points of contact of national or European programs that have to do with animal health. They call us. We give our comments guided by our strategic agenda. If we don't know, we get in touch with experts within the Vet+I family to give comments and generate topics which supply the market. And we've spoken about Horizon Europe this morning, but there are many other initiatives that we are involved in order to help these products reach the market. And very briefly, 3 initiatives that help us: Vet Innova, Vet Responsible, and Vet Divulga. The first one, Vet Innova, is a database in Spain of everything that is done in research. The offers, patents, all the technology in Spain, facilities to do the trials and tests for new tools. Also, there's a section on the industry demands, and then people for public and private collaboration for networking. As you see, it's in English with a Union Jack up there on the right, because we translate everything into English, and we give experts from companies and research centers, we give them the opportunity, and I invite our colleagues in France and Portugal to do so. They can propose private or public calls and proposals. And we publish that information every week. If not, you can do a search of whatever institution you want to get in touch with, and you get in touch with that institution or that person. This is an example of a research center to show you all the needs, projects, patents, installation facilities, publications, where you see everything that can be done or what those research centers do, and you can contact them. You got the email address and the phone number. Then we do meetings, open days. We invite researchers and companies to come and tell us about their challenges, their objectives, their collaborative needs. There's a theoretical side and then a B2B series of meetings so that collaboration can go forward, and networking. We have online our 4th Animal Health Innovation Day on new innovation and new therapies. We're going to talk about bacteria, vaccines, monoclonal antibodies, all kinds of new therapies to try and cover the gaps in the needs. It's going to be on the 20th of April, and we got a few hundred people enrolled already. And we also collaborate with countries that get in touch with us to try to collaborate through Vet+I, and also by presenting what we do in Spain. For instance, we collaborate every year with our French colleagues. Laure, I think you know them, at the association in France. They have a very big event within BioFit. It's now One Health, and we do the same. As I said before, we do that with European colleagues, or French colleagues in this case, for projects that go beyond our frontiers. And we also try to promote knowledge by companies and stakeholders of what is done in research centers. I don't know whether you know that the Crescent in Barcelona and the Crescent in Madrid are scientific and technical facilities that are singular, and we've taken companies to the labs so that the researchers tell them what they're doing and what they can do. Then we also get together every year to talk about a common topic, and we support networking and we promote things. We invite speakers, international speakers from the Commission, Parliament, the WHO, OEE, experts, international or national experts, to deal with a topic of interest. In this case, this year, we have on the 14th of June, we haven't opened up the registration, but we invite you all to come. We're going to talk about sustainability, which is so fashionable right now in our industry, sustainability projects for animal health. And every 2 years we give a reward to innovation in animal health. We reward public-private collaboration with a research result at national or international level every year at our annual conference. And then I didn't want to finish without talking about our bulletin. We publish a circular bulletin on patents, world patents. This we launch every 3 months, and this is thanks to the collaboration we have with the Spanish Agency of Patents and Trademarks. We do a study divided into species and diseases of what is needed at world level. For instance, in aquiculture, you can look for the disease you're interested in and see what's new on the market, and then you can look at that information. It's also in English, so it's open to everybody. And this is what we continue to do at Vet+I. We try to keep up development of new products, breach gaps, etc. But we realized years later that we also needed an initiative to keep drugs and medicines safely and qualitatively on the market. So we launched Vet Responsable, which is for the responsible use of drugs and medicines to maintain the quality, efficacy. We have a website, as you see, and guides where we talk about legislation, pharmacovigilance, all the steps, and the use of the drug by vets. And thanks to this initiative, we won the PRAN 2018 prize to the best initiative for professionals in the industry on antibiotic resistance. These guides are developed by ourselves with our working groups, and all the stakeholders have participated, and they've been approved by our board and by the General Council of Vets of Spain. We go to all the colleges of veterinary science in Spain. Here you see a picture with Ramiro Casimiro, with the agency, future veterinarians. We go to colleges. We'll be in Lugo in Galicia at the end of April. We try to promote and disseminate everything we do. We talk about pharmacovigilance, prescriptions, etc. And we also are part, as a Spanish initiative, we are members of the European Pruma platform for responsible use with members from Europe, and we try to do the same at European level. We help with documents, we organize meetings, we are also associated, we are one of the countries in this network. And the final slide is for our last baby, which is Vet Divulga, for dissemination of science. This was born very recently because we realized that a lot of people got in touch with us looking for help in terms of dissemination. And we are on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, more than 14.5k followers. We deal with news, videos, everything. And with Vet Divulga, we help people with their projects to disseminate what they're doing and to spread the news about what is being done with websites, with meetings, news, etc. And that's all from me. This is my email address. If you've got any questions, we're at your disposal. Thank you.
Pues muchas gracias, María.
Well, thank you, Maria. That was a pleasure to get to know more of what you're doing at the foundation and the support you give to the industry and animal health. We're going to continue with our speakers, and now we invite Pablo Hervás, Technical Director of Veterindustria, the Association of Companies in the Industry in Spain. He's a vet. He's also a member of the Technical Committee of Animal Health Europe and Vice President of the Vet+I Foundation. He's going to give us a talk on new regulation on veterinary medicines, opportunities and challenges for the animal health industry. Welcome, Pablo, when you're ready.
Hola, buenos días.
Hello, good afternoon to everyone. I would like to thank the organisers for inviting Veterinindustria. I am here to give you the vision today from the point of view of the regulator. This is a presentation that is based on standards and rules and regulations and how that can improve availability of veterinary medicines in animal health. And basically we will talk about two things: availability and antimicrobial resistance, AMR. I would like to highlight or underline that these are of concern, these issues for the industry. From the beginning, the industry is fully committed to these two issues. It's a sector which is for farmers and vets, and we want to help and make available tools that make people's work easier in order to contribute to animal health. That is our goal. And that is why I am here, and I'm thankful for the invitation to tell you about this from the point of view of the industry. Now, to set the scene, Veterinindustria is the association of companies in the sector in Spain. It's very representative. 95% of animal health products market in Spain we represent. We also represent zoos, sanitary products, diagnostics, hygiene, biocides, etc. We talk about veterinary medicines. The association accounts for almost 100% of the market in Spain. Also, I like to highlight that we are a member of Animal Health Europe, Health for Animals, and the different organizations in Spain like FEIGE, ASEBIO, and CEOE, the Spanish Entrepreneurial Association. In order to give you some details about the industry, if you're not familiar, Veterinindustria is made up of 46 member companies, of which 30 have manufacturing sites in the whole country. This is important. This is an important industrial industry that contributes to the economy of the country. We've got factories and facilities all over Spain almost, and it is a sector that is very committed to innovation. We'll look into that in more detail, but there is an average of 6% of our turnover is devoted to R&D activities. There are 12 R&D centers in Spain, and we also contribute to employment, to jobs. There's a slide with all the factories in Europe for producing veterinary medicines. I didn't want to leave out one thing, which is there are 8 plants for immunological medicine manufacture in Spain. We've seen that during COVID that that's very important to be able to manufacture vaccines and products in the country. In Spain, there's always been a tradition in making vaccines. We've had 8 plants for a long time in operation, and they've played a huge role during the COVID crisis. And that effort I wanted to underline too. It's a small sector, small industry, but it's strategic because we contribute to public health, to animal health and welfare, to healthy and sustainable food, and also to the protection of the environment. And if we go to more specific topics, the drugs and medicines in general are very highly regulated as an industry, and in fact right now we have an updated regulatory framework. It was published, the framework, in January 19 with a transition period, and it came into force since last year. January this year is the first year really since the application, and here you see the moment when we signed, the European institutions signed in January 18, and since then we have a regulatory framework and we are going to explore and see how this can contribute to the two aims that we're talking about today. First of all, I would like all of us to feel satisfied and also thank everybody for their work, for all the work, the huge effort this has taken. I was personally involved because I'm a technical director manager of Veterinindustria, but many other people have taken part, authorities, European institutions, stakeholders. We have done a comparison of the previous directive. It took 4.5 years to develop the rules. In this case, it took twice the time, double, 8 years almost. There's been a lot of debate because of AMR. That's also lengthened the period, but finally, after a huge amount of work, we can say that we have a regulatory framework which is very current and which we are all very happy with. Now, the questions we ask ourselves a year later is, are we meeting the original objectives? And what are the objectives? Well, I would like to underline this because often we've seen news about the publication of the framework of the rules that talks about antimicrobials only, but the rules go beyond that. They cover all the stages of development of medicines, from research to manufacture to development, and therefore it's a very wide-ranging set of rules. One of the main goals of the set of rules is to improve availability of medicines by reducing administrative red tape, stimulating innovation and improving the operation of the interior market. And one of the big goals, of course, is to face up to antimicrobial resistance, AMR. I think that the answer to this question is that we haven't had time yet to know whether and to say whether really our goals, our objectives are being met. These rules we've only just recently implemented, so it's good to monitor this, and I think that we're doing a good job collaborating with the authorities at European level and Spanish level to follow up and monitor the implementation of these rules and regulations, and also to see whether these aims are met. Now, we're talking about therapeutic gaps and needs in sectors. We've done a very significant job to look at the needs, and I'd like to highlight 4 examples. We've got the work that Maria has mentioned through the Vet Plus I Foundation, all the work that's been presented this morning, Cristina Muñoz at the PRAN, Availability Group for the National Plan Against AMR, and then the Availability Committee of the agency is a very good example where everybody who has to do with animal health is there looking at gaps, doing gap analysis, and also Discount Tools. That initiative at European level is very good. It has a lot of information on needs in the industry and sector. There are vacuums here, we know, but is the industry doing anything about this? Well, the industry is developing new drugs and medicines, and the response is yes, it is. The industry is doing a lot, is investing great efforts in innovation and development of new products. This doesn't mean to say that we've complied with all objectives. You've got the gaps and the needs that the sector has, but we would also like to underscore the work of the industry and also the authorities with a few examples that I will give you. Just to give you an idea, these are official data from the AMA and the EMPS. Between 19 and 22, there were 57 positive opinions, 25 new active substances for all species that you see there. One is repeated. I put it in twice, but anyway. And we're talking about innovative medicines, new medicines that might help reduce the need for antimicrobials in animals. We're talking about innovation in products that already exist. Yesterday we went to a meeting to look at all this, and the authorities, specifically in this case in Spain, are leading several areas like dossiers on antibacterials, vaccines. The veterinary industry is pioneering some of these innovations that can be extrapolated to other sectors like human health. And I think we should value this because we are doing a very good job to see what we can do to improve innovation in our sector, but also companies that are developing stem cell therapies for horses, dogs, DNA vaccines. The first DNA vaccine that was developed was in the veterinary field, acupuncture and acuculture, and it's being looked at for humans too. And these are things that are very technological and very new and novel. And it's a source of pride to be able to say that we have the knowledge of our sector to advance in this respect.
En este caso de España, tenemos actualmente más de 2.000 medicamentos autorizados para las diferentes especies animales. De hecho, en los últimos años, como veis ahí, se han desarrollado 322 medicamentos veterinarios para perros, gatos, cerdos, vacuno, ovejas, gallinas. Bueno, como veis ahí, incluso vemos ahí abejas, hurones. Y se han aprobado 93 ensayos clínicos, lo cual implica también todo el desarrollo que se está haciendo para nuevos productos. Con esto quiero decir, obviamente, que sigue habiendo vacíos y necesidades, siempre las habrá seguramente, pero estamos yendo por la senda correcta. Pero claro, se dan dos circunstancias muy características de nuestro sector y como se ha puesto de manifiesto a lo largo de la jornada, es que contamos con un sector altamente fragmentado.
As we've been saying once and again, there's many species, and as part of the indications, there's different indications. As you know, the medications are used for species and for the indications. If we have an indication for the gillhead or for hake, it's for just that indication or for another animal from that species. There's a huge variety of different species, and therefore it's very specific, this sector. But there is also a lot of value, actually a small value for the value of the market. It only represents 3% of the value of human drugs. It is a small percentage, therefore. Something else I'd like to underline is that the regulatory reform during the process showed a problem in terms of the administrative burden, which is double than that of the human medication. So that was one of the main objectives for the development of this regulation, and that is one of the problems we want to reduce, reducing the red tape, which is unnecessary, so that those resources from the authorities, but also from the industry, because this is a shared problem, when the administration can reduce the administrative burden, they can dedicate those resources to other tasks that contribute more value added to the products. And the same goes for companies. This slide shows some examples that for sure are going to have a positive impact on the development of new products. It's simplified. Actually, there's been much more streamlined and effective procedures that have been drafted, always bearing in mind the high demand in terms of quality, safety, and efficiency of VMPs. We're talking about the labeling, we're talking about the simplified rules, and the deletion of some elements, and the different things that I'm not going to go into the details. Obviously, also an approximation more based on risks. We've been working on it for 1 year, but we need to wait and see how this is implemented. But there's some challenges that have come up, and for sure there's going to be new challenges. And one of the challenges that we're facing right now, and I'm sure that some of you know about that, are the databases. There's 3 big databases that have been developed that are going to be centralizing the entire work, and therefore it is fantastic vis-a-vis the future. For sure that is going to represent more efficient processes. But as of today, we're counting much more work than the one that we had initially foreseen. We, the companies, are counting that are right now, and right now the situation we're facing is an administrative burden which is higher. We understand that maybe that is going to be only until this databases are up and running so that we can eventually get the reduction of the administrative burden. A not very positive side is that the quality requirements have not been well solved. The off-label use is not allowed, the cascade yes, but not off-label of the VMPs, and we need to see the impact that that might have and how we might solve that. But also I'd like to say that we have a legal grounds that has improved in terms of the definitions, and that is very important because that gives legal safety for this industry, which generates predictability, and that is positive. Definitions are always good, but if you are very strict in the definition of that, maybe that might have a negative impact, an undesired impact. To give you an example, in the case of vaccines, if we consider that a new vaccine needs to be centralized because all active substances need to go through the centralized procedure, if a disease affects a small region or geography, the desired procedure is not the centralized one. Maybe it's a different one. And that interpretation, which is maybe not so flexible, might impact on the availability. Well, these are challenges that we're facing because when there's a new regulation, obviously, we need to see the problems that emerge in order to try to solve them. Some of these problems have already been solved, such as the packaging or the research of VMPs, and obviously all interested parties have had to collaborate. Do we have new challenges? Oh yes, there's a very important one, which is the leaflet. E-leaflet, actually. We consider it is very good that during the implementation of the standard, the member states incorporate the legal grounds so that we can replace the paper leaflet by the leaflet. Maybe that this is not the best time. We will see the feasibility, but we need a legal ground so that we can change vis-a-vis the future. We in Spain have already done that. In our royal decree, we allow for that possibility. And obviously, if there comes a time, there might be a very good impact on the carbon print, because obviously the industry uses a lot of paper in the development of this material. Harmonization of SPCs, it is also an important challenge, and let's hope that that does not represent an availability issue. And it is also important to avoid the duplicity in terms of the notification, so we can make use of the information that is being notified to the UPD for some of the requirements, for instance, in the case of antibiotic data and so on. Well, we can explore that. And another challenge that we're facing, which is actually very novel, is the protection of the technical documentation additional 4 years for innovation of existing products. The 2,300 VMPs that we already have can be improved, and if they improve, obviously, that is conditioned to some requirements. They need an additional protection, and that is something that has been implemented in veterinary and in human since they're beginning with the standard renovation. They want to explore that. We're talking about a vertical type of legislation. It is a highly regulated industry, as you can see, and we should avoid any type of cross-cutting regulation so that there's over-regulation of this industry. For that, we consider it's very important for the agencies that know the VMPs to get involved from the very beginning on these issues. There's some examples here, the PFAS or titanium dioxide and the packaging regulations and so on. Maybe there would be an impact on availability, and therefore we believe it is very important to monitor these regulations so that we avoid any undesired situation. In terms of the proposal for the renewal, or rather the review of the EMA taxes or fees, we believe that this is not the best time to approach this. We're in a global environment, which is not the desired one, obviously, and that would increase maybe 50% the fees. That, you can imagine, is probably a barrier for the innovation and development of products. That is why we believe that this approach in veterinary needs to be postponed, and once we've ended up implementing the regulation of VMPs, but we still need to develop the databases, and we need to see what work is developed and so that we can approach more in a more realistic way once we know what we need to do. Therefore, from the industry point of view, we consider that for us to have a good ecosystem in innovation, we need predictability. Guidelines are very helpful, but if they're very detailed, maybe that might go against innovation. So we need to be flexible also. All decisions need to be based on science, obviously, and we need to have a good dialogue with authorities, especially in new therapies. There's an interaction with companies from the beginning. We discussed that yesterday, and that is key, because none of us are expert on that. We companies don't know much about that, but authorities, that's new for all. So it's very good that we, from the very beginning, can discuss this jointly. An optimistic message. We believe it is still too soon to make a general assessment of this issue, but in the mid and long run, most probably we're going to be able to simplify the administrative burden. Just a few words about antimicrobials. I'd like to say, and we've talked about the fact that the regulatory framework is not very good for innovation in animals. In animals, the requirements have been increased during all phases to protect the molecule, which is key for human health, but also for animal health. But it is good for us to consider always that decisions are based on science. A very good example was the one that we had in the European Parliament when we approved the list of antibiotics reserved for humans that was based on the scientific opinion of the European agencies with a One Health approach with multidisciplinary teams, and that was an example of support of the Parliament to science. A very important objective to reduce antibiotics has been fulfilled. It is a huge effort by all the people involved in animal health, but we also consider that it is very important to monitor how this decrease in the veterinary world affect resistances in the human health. We need to compare the data to see whether what we're doing has an impact or not on human resistances, so that we can take the decisions which are the right ones. Finally, just to finish, I'd like to underline, as I started to talk about the commitment from the industry for the fight against antimicrobial resistance, the approach of the National Plan of Antimicrobials plan was very, very good. And finally, I'd like to talk about information and communication, which is essential. Cristina said it at the beginning. When we have a new regulatory framework, there's confusion, there's doubts, and it is very important to have a lot of clarity in terms of what we can do, what we cannot do, because the regulation empowers the vet practitioners. Vet practitioners are key for the prescription of drugs, and therefore we believe that there's initiatives that promote information and know-how with different tools such as training programs and so on to promote the knowledge of these new guidelines. And if we do use them, we might avoid undesirable problems such as the knowledge or the well-being. Finally, we need to allow the advertisement of immunological veterinary to medical products to the professional animal keepers. It is very good for the prevention and antimicrobial resistance, and we need to implement that in the European Union. Thank you very much for your attention, and this is our Twitter account. All of us are very much involved in social media, in case you want to label us, and the website in case you want more information about this. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Pablo.
Thank you very much, Pablo, for your presentation. Since he was talking about the social media, I'd like to remind you that if you want to tweet or to publish something about today, the hashtag is availability disponibilidad vet. We're going to close with someone from the house, Cristina Ballesteros, who is part of the coordination unit of PRAN. She's a PhD a specialist in resistance and a master's in the Royal Veterinary College. She's going to talk about challenges, opportunities, and next steps for the improvement of availability of antimicrobials and their alternatives. Thank you, Cristina. Good morning. As Sarah said, I'm going to be in charge of closing this very interesting morning of talks. And we will have a Q&A session during which we may analyze more in depth the proposals and the questions that we're going to launch. We've divided our talk into number one, an introduction, and then we are going from the macro, from the measures that we have at the EU level, so as to analyze more in depth the initiatives that we want to present and the cooperation we have with France and Portugal. Then measures adopted by the tripartite initiatives, measures at a national level, and recommendations for you as stakeholders, and then suggestions and sort of like a brainstorming. Going back to this morning's presentation, Laura was talking about the definition about how or what we mean by an availability. There was different scenarios, and a conclusion that we've reached, I believe, and that happened in Oman also, was that the majority of the situations when there's resistances, they would be antibiotics that had already been approved, but those antibiotics are not available for the potential species and for the potential indications in all countries. On the one hand, this is a message where we still have a lot of room for improvement without having to go to new molecules, which we know are going to be reserved for humans. Obviously, if we talk about Europe, I need to talk about regulation, which I believe Pablo has been talking about interesting subjects. And I'd like to insist, on the one hand, on the fact that the regulation tries to establish a modern, updated framework. The increase of availability of the VMPs is very important, and at certain points in time, they try to promote that. Let's analyze in depth the ways that we can have availability of VMPs. The first step to know whether we're missing something or not is by knowing what is available. And in that sense, the database of the Union will provide a good opportunity for that. As part of their objectives, we have increasing transparency and decreasing the administrative burden of the trading players so that they can manage the variations. But there's also other objectives that will be very helpful in terms of knowing what is available, because it will allow to visualize updated information about the VMPs in EU and the economic space, also EEA. It will allow the vet clinicians to know which country has a specific VMP available and compare it to other alternatives, and it also includes information about registered homeopathic veterinary medicines and veterinary medicines that are paralleled trade. This is not functional yet, as you know, and I hope that soon. I actually tried to enter as a user yesterday, and there's still nothing for consultation, but it's going to be very interesting. Pablo talked about the fact that prescription at the margin of authorization, there's distinction whether there's non-producing animal species, whether it's for food-producing terrestrial animal and for food-producing aquatic animal species. And another article says that there's new withdrawal times, new rules for setting withdrawal periods in those VMPs that are used in food-producing animals. This has been positive for anti-inflammatories, for instance, of bovine and caprine, because it's been reduced, but there's some withdrawal times that have been increased. It is true that the prescription without the authorization margins increases the availability, but we believe that the responsibility is in the hands of the vet specialist, and actually the vet practitioner needs to analyze case by case whether prescribing that drug has more benefits than risks. So this is not, in our opinion, the most adequate tool in order to increase availability. We've also talked about the limited markets. As you can see there, a limited market is a market of vet products dedicated to prevent or treat diseases which have a low prevalence, or which are restricted to a specific area, or for those species that are not bovine, nor porcine, nor cattle, nor pigs, nor cats or dogs. Article 23 establishes that the applicant shall not be required to provide the comprehensive safety or efficacy documentation required in accordance with Annex 2 if all of the following conditions are met. The benefit of the availability on the market of the veterinary medicinal product to the animal of public health outweighs the risk inherent in the fact that certain documentation has not been provided. This shows the alternatives. On the one hand, there's medications that are up to the definition of the limited market, but then there's other where the benefit is not bigger than the risk of having that drug. So some are electable via Article 23 and others are not. In the case of those that are not applicable according to Article 23, well, then they will need to follow the normal pathway, but there's more flexibility allowed on the dossier. And for that, there's a new guideline that is being developed for those products of limited markets which are not eligible according to Article 23. We hope that that is finished by the end of this year. A couple of things. We know that this is not the best option, Article 23, for antimicrobials and antiparasitaries, because it's difficult to prove that safety and efficiency, not having that information outweighs the benefit. It is difficult for them to be eligible, but that is an option for alternatives. And the other thing I'd like to tell you is that that eligibility can be requested from EMA, but any other competent authorities also. This information was shared at the EMA Info Days so that you know that ever since the regulation was enforced, the request for classifications for limited market, there's 15 products that have been considered eligible under Article 23. 3 of them are chemicals, and there's also 12 biologicals, 10 vaccines, and 12 of those products have been classified as limited market according to Article 4. 7 chemicals, 5 vaccines. Another option, so as to launch more VMPs, is the exceptional circumstances that happen when the benefit for the animal health or human health of the availability of VMPs outweighs the risks of not having certain information in terms of quality, safety, or efficacy. They need to prove that. The holder of the permit, in this case, the validity is 1 year. And also related to what we mentioned, they've been aware of the fact that innovation and those preclinical trials represent a very big investment for the pharmaceutical industry. They've contemplated some protection periods for the technical documentation, and they've extended those protection periods. As you know, according to Article 39, for all those veterinarian products that authorize for the authorization in major species, the protection period of the documentation, the technical documentation, is 10 years, 14, if it is for one of those major species. And if it is a VMP, the active principle of which is an antimicrobial, which is not authorized in the Union when the authorization is requested, it is 14 years also for minor species. And in the case of bees, it's 18 years. Additionally, when the permit holder request a VMP for more than one species, either there is an extension of the permit including one more species, at least. The protection period in that case extends 1 year per species if it's for major species, and for the so-called major species it would be 4 years per species, considering always that the maximum protection for the technical documentation is 18 years. Also, the studies that happen for the establishment of the maximum residue levels have a protection of 5 years. This is related to what Pablo was talking about, Article 40. Paragraph 5. In this special case, if a variation to the terms of the marketing authorization approved in accordance with Article 67 involves a change to the pharmaceutical form, administration, route, or dosage, which is assessed by the agency or the competent authority referred to in Article 66 to have demonstrated either a reduction in the antimicrobial or antiparasitic resistance or an improvement of the benefit-risk balance, there's 4 years of protection. What are we talking about? What's the improvement of the risk-benefit analysis or balance? Well, for that, there's been a reflection paper to see how to apply this article. Now, going to things that have been defined in the regulation that afterwards have been developed more in depth. If we talk about activities related to antimicrobial resistance, well, there was a pilot project for the harmonization and optimization of antimicrobial products. As you heard from Inés this morning, a lot of people talk about the fact that those antibiotics that have been in the market for years now, the technical papers are not updated and the dosage is too low. So those would be candidates to work on them and to update the dosage. Data were requested from Animal Health Europe and the group of genetics. And the committee of VMPs is now assessing which would be the next steps. There's also a reflection paper to promote the authorization of alternatives to antimicrobials. What other initiatives are there which are interesting, we believe? Well, there's an expert group that has been created to provide scientific recommendations to the committee of VMPs regarding the list of substances which are essential for the treatment on equine species. There's the Vet Big Data Hub. It is a forum that wants to have contact between the industry, the authorities, the companies of software, vet practitioners, and other, in order to explore the abilities of big data in the veterinarian use, which is unknown up to now, and that might have an influence in reducing the bureaucratic burden and in improving the availability also. We might also know the tendencies in terms of antimicrobial resistances. That's a strategy that is going to be implemented until 2027. Andrea talked this morning also about the single point of contact network for shortages. One of the functions is that they're in charge of reporting about the shortages which are critical in terms of VMPs, but also human products. Very briefly, I would like to talk about the fact that we wanted to see here which are the guidelines that are being developed in terms of alternatives, vaccines. Pablo talked about DNA vaccines also for veterinary use. Now they've released for public consultation the guideline on DNA vaccines, and there's 3 other guidelines which maybe are a bit older. They're from last year, 2021, but we believe also that they offer information that you might be interested in terms of updating of adjuvants and new adjuvants that can be used in vaccines, guideline on data requirements in case of immunological products for exceptional circumstances, and another guideline for data requirements for vaccine platform technology masters.
And the new therapies, or novel therapies, offer possibilities. It's unexplored territory. So very active group, and we've tried to reflect here the therapies we think are more associated with antimicrobials and their alternatives. You see that there is one exception: monoclonal antibodies are not considered to be a novel therapy, but the working group also works on monoclonal antibodies and has contributed to the VICH guide. And then bacteriophages, I would like to underline, especially in certain sectors, it is seen as a very promising field. And also you can look at the EFSA, safety and efficacy of a feed additive consisting of the bacteriophages. You have the details on the screen. The EFSA published last year a report, as you know, assessing the safety and efficacy of feed additives consisting of the bacteriophages for salmonella that could be applied to all birds, all poultry. And the result was that although the product was safe, it hadn't been shown to be fully efficacious yet. And recently there's a working group to work on nanomedicines, which will publish a concept paper. At the level of our collaboration, what do we see? What do we think we can start to work on? We've in fact started already. On the one hand, we are working on a report that will be published in addition to the priorities that we've spoken about today. And what we're trying to do is to identify the common needs in the 3 countries, especially in species that are considered minor, with the aim of telling the industry about the existence of those markets, limited small markets, which we hope will become more attractive to investors. Another thing we think is interesting is to have a list of the requests of VMPs approved in each country to motivate the MAH to submit mutual recognition for those VMPs. Another thing that we think is very important is to define good practices so that we can know beforehand when the MAH has the intention to stop marketing a drug or a medicine. There's a protocol right now, but we need more anticipation in order to foresee what the impact of the discontinuance of that medicine will be. And then obviously we have to encourage other agents in other member states. We've got Gabriel here. Good morning, you're welcome to be here. Ireland has got involved, and they're going to work with us too on this work. Nationally, what can we say? Well, there's a reduction of registration fees, and as you can see, it's an exemption of 70% reduction in all areas except for ownership transfer. In France, we have also a similar situation, different cases depending on the procedure, but there's a reduction of fees. And Ines might be able to tell us about the situation in Portugal now so that we're updated regarding that. And then what recommendations do we have for you? Well, on the one hand, for all clinicians, to report, we ask you to report any unexpected event after giving a medicine, any adverse effect, and also lack of efficacy of a medicine, irrespective of whether it was in cascade or it's a human medicine or not. And I also wanted to tell you the procedure in Spain. You know that we got the green card, we call it, but we've also got a system called Notifica Vet to report using the internet online. And what would we like to ask the industry? Well, the pharmaceutical industry. Well, these things we said about regulations and what have you, we hope that they're of interest to you. You use them, you work with us and with the groups that have been set up to develop new medicines and also bring to the market other pharmaceutical formulations, other species, other applications, etc. And to finish, what else can we do? Well, I think this is to close, and we'll go into the Q&A. We think it's very necessary. There is a system to centralize reports on problems of supply in the past and the present, but we think we should improve that centralization at European level, improve the procedure so that the owners tell us whether they're going to discontinue any medicine from the market and get ahead of that situation and see what might happen. And also, as you know, professionals, health professionals and the general public can also notify about lack of supply. And in addition to doing that, they should also be able to notify and tell people when they've got no tools or anything to prevent or to treat a disease. So it's not just telling people that there's no supply, but also telling people that there is nothing available to treat a given problem. And also, if you remember this morning, Christina was talking about restrictions of antimicrobials because they're for humans. Also, we've got the situation in aquaculture and other species where there is only one or two or three molecules that are available, or only one molecule available to professionals. So we don't know what's going to happen with resistances. So what we've got to do is, if we cannot put on the market novel molecules on the market, we will be faced with the problem of having to use the same ones all the time, and the resistance will continue to increase. So we've got to follow that and generate evidence to see what the situation is. So, in line with what Andrea has said, we see also in terms of the European pharmaceutical strategy that supports research and development of human medicines, maybe we could adopt a similar approach in animal medicines or implement a Revara network for priority medicines, and maybe we can talk about these in the Q&A. And that is all from me. And I just wanted to thank your effort, the effort of all the members of the different working groups to reflect the needs and let the industry know about it. Thank you. And as you can see, improving availability of medicines and products is something that we all have to contribute to. So I hope this is a first step towards greater availability of antimicrobials and their alternatives, and also fight resistance. Thank you very much.
Pues Cristina, muchísimas gracias.
Thank you, Christina, and thank you for what you've said. I think the situation that we're experiencing in terms of availability of veterinary medicines, and to close the day and the session, we would like to invite all the speakers: Andrea Garcia, Laure Baduel, Ines Almeida, Cristina Muñoz, Maria Jauregui, Pablo Herbaz, and Cristina Ballesteros to come to the stage, and we're going to have a panel discussion where you can ask them the questions that you might have and analyze the situation and reach some final conclusions. So feel free to ask us or ask the experts anything that you want to know, or make any comment that you wish to make, so that we can debate it and get some answers. Has anybody got any questions? Or is everything crystal clear? Well, to break the ice, I would thank you if you could please think of questions and comments. I would like to start with something. I was hearing what you said, and I was listening, and you've all said how important it is to work on research or in research and development of new antimicrobials, but you've given special importance to the development of alternatives to our antimicrobials. You've mentioned the importance of innovation. So I would like each of you, very briefly, because there's a lot of you, to tell us what you think the tools are, the best tools are, most important tools are to take those new alternatives, create those new alternatives and put them on the market to fight resistance. We'll start on the left with Maria. Well, tools for innovation. Yes. New therapies. Yeah, for development of alternatives to antimicrobials. Well, the first thing I would mention is to have meetings like this one, and for different institutions like the agency and the ministry to collaborate, and collaboration between countries and stakeholders, the industry, listen to the industry, speak to the regulator, speak to researchers, know what is being done and transfer all that, get to know everything so that you gather all that and put the best things on the market and what vets need. I agree, yeah, collaboration, full collaboration. This is a good example. This quadripartite initiative with the 4 countries. Well, 3 words: clarity, communication, and sensitivity. Clarity, we need guides. We need the industry involved and tell the industry these are the rules of the game that you've got to play by. And in that respect, the EMA is doing great efforts with new working groups, new guidelines, and I think that we are on the right path. Communication. Once we have the rules of the game defined, let's get together, those are the authorities, all stakeholders, the industry, to talk and debate, know where we are and what tools we have. And finally, flexibility. We've got to be flexible, authorities, agencies, the industry, to look at a cost risk-benefit analysis and develop vital tools and reduce the level of red tape. We've all got to be flexible, the industry too, and with flexibility I think we'll make it much easier to produce new medicines and new alternatives, maybe molecules that were used, have been used forever, and suddenly we realize that they can be used for other things, off-label. Right, very clear. Pablo, what do you think? In your sector, you're a representative of the industry. Well, Christina, you stepped on what I was going to say. She does it. She does it. She steals people's answers before they even have a chance to give them. No, you've said everything. Perfect. Well, I'd like to underline one thing. It's very important to have a dialogue from the start. I know that the procedure is fully implemented in terms of opinions of the authorities, especially regarding medicines, drugs. There are periods of time and procedures, but I think that we have to be more flexible with novel therapies and be more informal in our communication. To have a dialogue with the agency that is not so much procedural, but more informal. And because you've got a lot of doubts, and if you've got to wait for the whole procedure to go through, you wait forever. To give you an example, or examples of specific molecules or tools, yesterday, I mentioned the meeting yesterday, we spoke about this, it was very useful, bacteriophages. They're a tool that I learned was historically used in the Eastern European countries. I didn't know about that. So we've got people that have worked in the field in the east of Europe. There are no drugs yet, medicines. They're working on guidelines. The agency in Spain is pioneering this, and I think that is part of the future development. DNA vaccines, mRNA vaccines. Another drug's been approved for a dog disease recently, and there's a lot to be done. And the guidelines should be flexible. It's very important. In my presentation, I didn't go into it, but alternatives to antibiotics. How do you define an alternative? Because if the definition is very strict, you can apply restrictions to antibiotics to their alternatives, prevention, use restrictions, which for innovation would be a problem. So we've got to find out how we're going to define alternatives to antibiotics. You know better than I do, Christina, I'm sure. But yes, that's what I have to say. Thank you. Andrea, from the point of view of human health, what is your opinion about these alternatives, especially innovation in the field of alternatives? Well, microphone, please. We cannot hear the speaker. The microphone is not properly placed. Yes, we should look into different clinical trials, different evaluation of clinical trials. Maybe we might have to change things which, from the point of view of the regulator, are very well established, and we've got to think in advance and in good time, because if we don't do it in good time, we might have evidence that we don't know how to assess. So we've got to sit down, we've got to reflect, think about the information we want and how to assess that information in order to perhaps approach clinical trials in a different way, focusing on more specific patients and look at things different viewpoint. Ines, in Portugal, how are you dealing with these problems?
Yes, thank you so much. In Portugal, and I think also in the public sector in other countries, we are changing a little bit the way that we work in order to listen to all the stakeholders and to work in a collaborative way, in a true network like we are doing here today. So the information must be available to all. Nowadays we are producing more information that we were producing in the last years. So this part of the big data is very important also to use and to use in the correct way. So for sure, the governance and the public sector must be listening and also working together with all the stakeholders. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. And Laura, what do you think about that question?
Well, I think that communication is key, as it was already said, and because it's very important to increase the awareness of the market needs, the vet market needs. I think also another tool would be to increase the partnership with the sectors, especially when we need investment and that are critical for them. And sometimes also for the survival. I'm thinking about turkeys, for instance, or rabbits, which are small sectors and which could suffer a lot from unavailabilities of antimicrobial or the alternatives. And they could be ready to share investment. I think also maybe another important way is to open our view in terms of regulation to foreign regulation, as soon as the food market is open in Europe is open to products coming outside from Europe. Sorry. So I think it's interesting to have an open view of those foreign legislation to see how we could improve. And also, I think what is important is to better assess and communicate which tools really could reduce the antimicrobial resistance situation, both in humans and in the animal field, just to better assess this impact of all our efforts, at least in the vet field.
Thank you so much, Laura.
Laura, Cristina, to conclude this question, what do you think? Well, I think that I would underscore one of the things that has been said. On the one hand, it's a question with novel therapies, there's an issue of complexity. You can't approach this like you do other medicines. Bacteriophages, for instance, are very specific. And so on the one hand, that complexity requires flexibility. An example, I think, could be the archive of vaccine platforms, which allows you to reduce data requirements and give you the possibility of developing vaccines faster. That's been done thanks to the new rules, and I think that those are the two things that we've got to address, complexity and flexibility. Well, very interesting. I don't know whether, have we got a question? Oh, you've warmed up a little bit. By the way, I am going to get told off because I haven't reminded you that we've got interpreting going on. In fact, it's been going on all morning since 10:30. So if you want to follow the interpretation, please.
The managing director of the Portuguese Association of Veterinary Industry, I have to congratulate for this event in terms of it's a very actual and a very important issue. Congratulate the quality of all the presentations. And, well, I have to push a little bit for my country, Inês Almeida, that made an excellent presentation of what is going on in Portugal. Anyway, I have one or two questions. One is to Pablo. Well, I would say 95% of his presentation will be my presentation because we are representing the industry. So the issues are the same. But there is, I would like to put a question to Pablo, and now is the time that you will be suffering a little bit because I will use Portuguese wording because I don't know exactly how to use it in English. And for Pablo, I ask if in Spain, what we call in Portugal, legislação de execução nacional of the European regulation is completely done, or are still some domestic regulations that are not ready, because in Portugal we use a word that is o problema está nos detalhes, which is details sometimes is the problem. So I would like to ask concretely, Pablo, what's going on in Spain about this issue. The second point is there is, in this way, a problem is that veterinary prescription is diminishing drastically. And is it good because we are consuming less antibiotics and antimicrobial resistance is fine, or it is really bad because animal health are in risk? We would like to ask the veterinarians. The College of Veterinarians is absent here. I would like to know his voice and what the explanation for the restriction of prescription and the impact of this restriction. At least in Portugal, this is an important issue. Thank you very much.
Pues muchas gracias, Pablo. When you're ready, Pablo. Jose, I will answer in Spanish because you can understand. And if not, we can talk about it later. I think I can answer both questions. The first is that the authorities are here. Part of that has been implemented, pharmacovigilance, advertising, clinical trials. All that's is regulated by a royal decree here in Spain, which is in force, has been in force for a long time. And then we have the part that has to do with the market. which is generating a certain level of confusion, distribution, prescription and use. All that has not yet been fully implemented. There's a royal decree that's going through Parliament that's notified to the European Union, because you know that when there are market implications, it goes through the TRIS procedure, and that will be ready before the summer, I'm sure, and that would be an advance. And I'm sure that in Portugal the situation is similar. Clinicians need clear rules. The rules talk about high probability, serious situation. These are very general terms. How do you define them? How do you go about them? In Spain, and this goes to the second question, it's like in Portugal, but the problem is not just prescription of antimicrobials, which we understand we have to reduce, especially with farm-to-table objectives, but that can have or could apply to the prescription of vaccines. We're saying that there should be no doubt by professionals when it comes to prescribing medicines that help to prevent, because that's part of the solution. We got to vaccinate people more and use antimicrobials, of course. The rules don't ban antibiotics. They don't say that they're bad for animals. They say that they are essential, but they must be used in specific cases. The prevention has been limited a lot. That's been restricted. Prophylaxis has not been forbidden completely. It's left for individual cases, but there is still a tool for specific cases. Rules have to be developed so that the vet can know what can be done and what cannot be done, and there are certain lines of work, like the development of guidelines on metaphylaxis, prophylaxis, which could help, I think, in this respect. But it's true that it is good for all of us to work, and obviously maybe there are some vets here who have an opinion about this, but we believe that it should not affect the prescription, that the prescription should not be affected and other drugs should not be affected, which is the aim. So we share problems in Spain and Portugal, so we'll be in touch. Well, you share your profession a lot, your position. I don't know whether anybody wants to answer the second question. Christina? Well, in the framework of the plan, we work from the beginning with the industries, and vets that are in the field are the first we listen to, because they have to face the problem every day. The reduction that we've achieved, which is impressive, I repeat it time and time again, is based on a voluntary has a voluntary basis within the sectors. It's had an impact greater in some sectors than others, depending on the development and the financial import of each sector. For instance, in pigs, they changed and improved a lot when cholesterol was withdrawn. The impact was not very great. The reduction, for instance, we presented that with sheep, has been impressive, 94% reduction in the use of premixes, but the impact has been very enormous, increased losses, breeding problems, etc. So it depends on the sector. In any event, we've seen and realized that when we work together with the sectors, with the frontline people who deal with this every day in the field from Brussels, when you work with them, the impact is always lower. And it can be, if there are problems, they can be corrected in good time. Any questions more? A question over here. There was one before. Hello. First of all, I want to thank all the speakers for the clearness, the clarity with which they've spoken. I work at Schwann Pharma. We produce and distribute APIs. And my question is a bit more general, not for anybody specifically. How can we help from the side of distribution and manufacture of APIs to improve that availability? Because I think that this is very interesting, and it's very interesting to gain first-hand knowledge of what API producers and manufacturers can contribute with. Use as regards this problem of supply and how we could help. Thank you.
I am going to say a few words, but then I will give the floor to the industry and maybe my colleagues from France and Portugal. It is clear, though, that when we are talking about drugs, we're talking also about APIs. When we're going to have one problem, knowing it beforehand allows us to take measures to avoid or prevent that issue. So all those recommendations of generating mechanisms so that we know with a lot of time ahead when we're going to have a problem, including you as very important key players, because very often that is the origin of the problem and not another one. All of this, maybe we focused on VMPs, but if we do not have the active principle, that's going to be a problem. So yes, it affects you for sure. All of the measures we've designed are meant for you because you're the origin of the chain, no doubt. Thank you very much. Are there any more questions? Yes? Well, there's a lot. Good morning to all of you. Thank you very much. It was a very, very interesting presentation, an excellent initiative. If we get together, we will be stronger, obviously. My name is Carmen Sanchez Mascaraque. I work in the drug agency in the veterinarian drugs department. I'd just like to make some comments, some specific information. The availability is going to be communicated. Actually, it's being communicated in two ways. One at the European level with EU database, UPD, because there's different levels of access, but there's access for everyone over there. Anybody can access information about the availability of the VMPs, because both the authorities but also the companies have to enter there the data about the availability of the medicine products, medical products, but also national authorities have their own systems. In future, the ideal thing would be for only one source of data to avoid duplicity. But until the UPD is totally functional, we need to have all the databases in order to have that information. Therefore, just for general information, the website of the Spanish agency, Encimabet, there you can see the shortage problems of VMPs, but there's also an application via which the applicants, the individual, private individuals, but can give information about VMPs that they don't have available, nor in their pharmacy, nor in their distributor. Maybe via the application, but also by sending an email, they can inform that. And all of the complaints, so to say, are taken care of. But the holders are obliged to inform the agency of the possible stock blockage or the and when is the next lot going to be available. So that is information which is available in the agency of the drug and also in the website, and the availability data in the UPD. And with time, we hope that we only need a single communication way. That is what I wanted to tell you. Thank you, Carmen. The information you're giving us is very important. Thank you. This updating about the status of the databases. Thank you so much. There's another question over there, right? Yes. Good morning. My name is Mareluz. I'm from the Interprofessional for the Promotion of the Public Industry, Intercul. I'd like to congratulate the agency of the drug agency for organizing this event, but also I would like to congratulate the involved countries and their respective agencies. It is a very nice but also very effective initiative. There's a lot of engagement of the industry in order to reduce the antibiotics. We have been executing a plan in the last few years with good results. But as Cristina Muñoz said, that was just for free. The industry has increased the mortality in our exploitations, in our farms, and within that context, the Association of Vets who are specialized in rabbits, for instance, have sent us formula to improve the therapeutic gaps that we have, which is important, but we also need alternatives in order to have complementary measures alternative to the reduction of the use of antibiotics. And in that context, we face two issues. We're a minor species, so there's not a lot of interest from the private initiative on our industry because the return of the investment is small. And our industry is so small that we do not have financial ability to face this with our own companies. So, in that context, the question is, how can we respond to these needs of alternatives to the reduction of the use of antibiotics in rabbit farming? Because maybe we may have an industry that has fulfilled the objectives, and we're working on that, by the way, but maybe we get out of an industry as a consequence. Thank you. Does anybody want to answer? Maybe Lord or Ines, with your experience in the rabbit industry.
Yes, so here in Portugal, we are a step a little bit before what is happening here in Spain. As you have been seeing in our reports, we haven't achieved a very decrease on the use of antimicrobials in Portugal. So, and it was due also to the legislation that was also in place. But we are taking little steps, and we want to now to use the funds that are coming from Europe to invest in the farmers that achieve good results. So we are also trying to give the money, give them money to have that investment also in their farms, so they achieve more and more reduction of the antimicrobials. So we are giving also that support to farmers to reduce the use, because I know that for small sectors like that one, that could be a good way to invest and also to support smaller farmers.
Sí, entiendo que resumiendo también como ha comentado antes.
Yes, summarizing, as Christiana mentioned with the previous question, related also to that. As you said, the collaboration between all of the players is key in order to get to a good solution, especially that don't affect specifically and mostly to many parts of the animal health. Thank you. We have another question, right? Muchas gracias, señora moderadora. Oh, perdón, perdona, Laura.
The question to answer to is a question about the rabbit sector. So I think, at least in France, we are very concerned by the issues encountered in the field by those small sectors, like I mentioned, for rabbits or turkey, or the dairy, sheep and goats sector. And I think that some partnership could be built up with the industry, because sometimes we are missing some residues depletion studies or some MRL extension just to answer to their needs. And these are not always major investment, but this will be a real help if there could be some financial support from the sector, maybe to development of new studies by the pharmaceutical industry. I think, yes, but at least that should be known, and this is the way where we try to progress, at least with the agency, just letting know those needs. And because it's very important to increase the awareness also of those needs. Because I'm not sure that, well, some needs are important and costful, but some others maybe are not. So at least try to work together on those specific needs.
Thank you very much. Gracias.
So maybe I would just echo what the last speaker has mentioned. And first of all, to congratulate the organisers for this meeting. I'm from Ireland, as you probably can hear from my accent. And very much we want to be seen as not part of the problem, but part of the solution to medicines availability, particularly for minor species and minor uses. And it was mentioned this morning, the new possibilities in the legislation, but one particularly useful one is simplification of the product labelling with all the details on the package leaflet. So that allows more, if you like, more efficient batch production in Europe, multilingual labels. And we very much would like to see, if you like, the market in Ireland as benefiting from that possibility. You know, we were very close to the UK. UK has left the European Union, and so we have a vulnerability with our medicines, and we want to try and, if you like, plug that gap. And we would like also to de-risk the process to encourage companies with existing marketing authorizations, albeit they may be old, but as long as the quality dossier is there, as long as there are good pharmacovigilance experience, then we would be prepared to look at dossiers on an informal basis to try and de-risk the process. And we look forward to working with France, Spain and Portugal on this effort. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Does anybody want to make any comment about this? Well, it's very interesting for all of us to collaborate. Different countries have different problems. In our continent, we have different climates or weathers, different specificities, and the species that are eaten in some countries maybe are not eaten in others, such as what Marilu said, the problems that we have in Spain maybe is different from what we have in a Nordic country, for instance, in terms of rabbit farming. So maybe we can reach common solutions. Obviously, we can cooperate. We are always willing to cooperate. We are always willing to contribute with our little help, obviously. Yes, I think that will be the highlight of this day. Collaboration, cooperation. I totally agree with you. Any more questions to close? Good. Just two more, please. Very concise, very brief, so that we close. Thank you very much to all of you. This is a question for Cristina Ballesteros, especially about the Vet Big Data Hub. Who is going to organize it? What countries are going to be involved? What administrations are going to be contributing with the data? I don't know if I should do this, that I'm going to feel free to do this, because we have the person who is involved in big data. Ricardo, maybe you could tell us in first hand, because you are involved in that, right? Ricardo, why don't you answer? Okay, I will answer you, but there's two people here who are involved there, so it would be much better. But I think without a microphone, he was suggesting that Law answers, I think he said that, but I didn't hear him.
We are working together in the same working group at the EMA on big data, veterinary big data, and clearly the Vet Big Data Hub is one of our major tool in our action plan, and we will start working on it. So for sure, at least we need to have a functional UPD, and as it was mentioned, we need to clarify also and to harmonize how the shortages declaration are made, and which is important. And then for that, we need, I think, that we need some work to clarify what we need, which data we need, only critical or not in terms of shortage, and also to assess the impact, the possible impact. So we still have some work to do prior to register and to record all those data, but of sure the UPD is a very nice and good database for that, and then we will work further on a vet big data hub. So this is one of our priorities.
Thank you so much, Lord. Ricardo, ¿quieres decir algo?
Thank you, Ricardo. Do you want to add anything? Ricardo is the coordinator of the environment side of things in PRAN, National Plan. We thank him for being here, although he hasn't had a chance to give a full answer. Manuel?
Hola, buenos días.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Manuel Marco. I am the president of the Association of Veterinarians specializing in aquaculture. Good. I wanted to support what Mariluz, my colleague, has said. From the time we were little, we've been taught that antibiotic discontinuance was a very good idea. We're withdrawing more than 70%. There's been a withdrawal of antibiotics of more than 70% in last years, and in recent years, and we should not forget about this. A tremendous effort has been made. The title of the meeting I especially like because it says improving availability of antimicrobials and their alternatives, because now we are talking about antibiotic reduction. No technician. We don't prescribe just because we feel like it or because of the hell of it. We prescribe antibiotics when they're needed, and our figures are 300 milligrams on average per unit, which was unthinkable 6 years ago. So now we find in the field that we get fines if we prescribe, and I think that's a scandal. It's a scandal. For reasons I'm not going to go into, I know about the Royal Decree 2019-216 in France, and I don't say that they're less rigorous, but if I understand correctly, they are just better to the situation on the field, and I think that we should do it in Spain. Inspectors that can even give us a fine should know what they're doing, and we at the association are going to defend ourselves from this because it's not a myth. We've got these things on top of us. That's just what I wanted to say. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Manuel. Good. I just want to publicly say that all sectors have made an impressive effort, especially the sector that Manuel represents. When we started, we never thought that we would achieve what's been achieved, and it's a sector which has paid a very high price for achieving that. So I want to recognize that publicly. And I think that at some stage we should pay tribute to these sectors and recognize publicly and promote and disseminate and tell people what you've achieved and what huge efforts you've made, and tell people that this hasn't been for free. It's been a tremendous effort by professionals and sectors to arrive at where we are. And every time I get the chance, I say it out loud and clear how thankful we are to all sectors, and how great our professionals are in Spain in the sector of veterinary science. Thank you. Well, I think that Pablo has also shown a slide which is significant on the achievements in the EU in terms of reducing the use of antibiotics. And at the end of the day, that's thanks to the work of the sectors and the industries, and our country has been a pioneer and the one that has reduced antibiotics best in the last few years. Can I just say something? We are always like to talk about reducing the need for antibiotics rather than reducing antibiotics as such, because we have a problem of resistance in humans. So we must remember that the problem are multi-resistant humans. So anything we can do to achieve that end is key, but we've got to reduce not just the antibiotics, but the need for antibiotics, not so much the antibiotics themselves, but that requires prevention. But we need to support the sector, the industry, because that might need different investments, biosafety measures, etc. And these things take time. We don't want problems with animal health and welfare. We don't want abattoirs to be animals to be sent to abattoirs with subclinical infections and what have you, because we're using feed, water, land to breed animals that cannot be slaughtered because they got infections. So we got to reduce the need. And I think we got to focus on that. We were on the right road, but we're also in a situation of applying a new rule that is not simple. Communication is key, and I think that you should be able to communicate and report your concerns. But I think that at this time, it's key for us to give you our support so that you can face all these investments that you'll have to make to achieve these challenges, to face up to these challenges, because we've not finished in Spain. We've reduced, 63% since 2014, since the PRAN came in. It's tremendous effort by the sector. We've got to reduce it more because there's an aim EU level. It's a number at the end of the day that has to be achieved. And at the end of the day, it's a One Health thing. We've got to solve the problem in humans, which is what we're worried about. So we will continue to work along these lines. Well, thank you very much. We've had a very fruitful session. We've run out of time. In fact, we're almost 45 minutes late, but you can have a cocktail if you wish now, and you can network and speak to the speakers and everybody. Thank you very much for being here. We don't want to miss the opportunity to thank you once again for being here in person. It's more and more usual, but it's a pleasure because you're part of the PRAN plan. Thank the director of the agency for her support, the Areces Foundation for their fantastic welcome, and for all their facility and all their help, and everybody involved, the industry, animal health industry, because this work, as we've said many times, without the collaboration of everybody, this wouldn't be possible. Thank you for being here, and don't forget that we're all PRAN, P-R-A-N. Thank you.